You know, there's a saying, if you're good, you'll tell everybody. If you're good, you will demand that they acknowledge you. If you're good. If you're great, they tell you.
I love that quote because it hits the nail on the head. True talent lies in doing everything. No need for a lengthy introduction, you already see the title. John Cena spent nearly 10 years proving he could do one thing exceptionally well. But then, at some point after Sisters, he stopped asking permission to try new things and began completely breaking free from the mold that had defined his name. This video is about what happens when an actor breaks free from the typecast, the mold that made them famous, and embarks on a journey of self-discovery. A messy, sometimes uneven, but genuine journey. And it is that very sincerity that reveals an actor with far more depth than one might imagine. We begin with The Marine. The film follows John Triton, a U.S. Marine who returns home after discharge and tries to reintegrate into civilian life. But things quickly escalate into a large-scale chase when he inadvertently becomes involved in a carjacking and becomes a target of the criminals. The story here is simple. There's no psychological depth, no moral gray areas. It all revolves around a single question. Can Triton protect his family with the skills honed in war? The plot is clear. The goal is clear. Cena portrays this character exactly as the film demands. Not complicated, not introspective, not trying to delve deeper than necessary. He is a soldier, quick-witted, decisive, acting instead of thinking. The dialogue is concise and direct. No superfluous emotions, no embellishments. It's noteworthy that Cena doesn't try to elevate the script. He doesn't try to add depth to a character who wasn't written to have depth. Instead, he did the basics well. He transformed Triton into a realistic, manual laborer, reliable, efficient, and convincing enough for viewers to believe he could survive any situation. This is the foundation. The Marine is where Cena played exactly what people expected of him at the time. An action hero with an overwhelming physique, acting limited beyond the physical aspect. And in fact, that was enough. The character of Triton isn't extraordinary, but he's very real within his mold. A soldier built to react to crisis. Cena brings a quiet, unpretentious confidence to the role, without trying too hard to impress. This is the starting point. A basic but honest role. And from this simple foundation, Cena's journey of development truly begins. Following the very straightforward foundation of The Marine, John Cena's next step takes a completely different direction with Legendary. This is a much smaller story, devoid of chases or criminal conspiracies, focusing instead on Cal Chetley, a quiet high school student trying to find balance after his family falls apart. His older brother, Mike, played by Cena, has just been released from prison after a violent incident related to their father's death. When Mike returns, the story shifts to a familiar sports film motif. The younger brother seeks self-confidence, while the older brother tries to atone for his mistakes by guiding him. Gone are the spectacular action sequences. The film revolves around family tension, guilt, and the wrestling season as a backdrop for healing. A noteworthy aspect is Cena's approach to the character of Mike. He no longer uses his familiar action hero energy, opting instead for restraint. Physically, he remains massive and powerful, but his performance is more subdued and heavy. Mike comes across as someone who knows he's wrong, but lacks the words to explain it. Cena keeps his lines concise and cautious, like someone constantly weighing every word. The film still leverages his physical appearance as a bulge. Clearly, this is the brother who can protect you in a fight. But interestingly, for much of the film, Mike tries not to be that person anymore. He's patient with Cal, supportive without being overly sentimental, and their brotherly relationship becomes the emotional backbone of the story. Cena doesn't try to overact. Mike is simply a brother trying to make up for lost time, and he portrays it appropriately. This serious, grounded approach gives the film an unexpected sincerity for a WWE production. If the Marine was the epitome of unbeatable, then Legendary was the first time Cena learned to restrain himself and let his presence speak for itself. Next came 12 Rounds, where he returned to the action realm, but with a clear step forward. The film follows Danny Fisher, a New Orleans police officer drawn into a series of dangerous challenges orchestrated by a mastermind seeking revenge. The film's structure revolves around increasing pace and time pressure. Each round is a new challenge, a new threat. The story is almost solely a pretext for the action and puzzle sequences. There isn't much thematic depth, nor does it attempt to create emotional resonance. But the interesting thing is how Cena begins to change. He still maintains his powerful energy, constantly reacting, constantly thinking. His face shows calculation. His voice carries urgency but not panic. However, this time there's an added layer: emotion. Occasionally, Cena reveals a vulnerability, moments when Danny questions whether he can handle it. Though these moments are brief and quickly swept up in the action, they reveal something important. He's beginning to understand that even in action films, emotional authenticity still matters. 12 Rounds thus becomes a transitional role. It's not as profound as Legendary, but clearly more intelligent than The Marine. Cena is learning to adjust his acting within the framework of action films, understanding that presence doesn't need emotion to exist, but when it does, that presence truly has meaning. From this point on, things begin to change dramatically. John Cena almost says goodbye to his typical WWE-style roles and moves in a completely different direction with Sisters. The film centers around two sisters, Maura and Kate, returning to their childhood home and deciding to throw one last party before their parents sell it. The story is very simple, almost lacking plot depth, mainly a series of chaotic situations, encounters with old friends, and the truth gradually emerging. They cannot return to their past selves. Cena plays Pazuzu, a merchant and the life of the party. But what's noteworthy isn't the role itself, but how he portrays it. This is the first time he completely goes against his usual image. Pazuzu isn't scary, not overbearing, even a little clumsy and harmless. Cena deliberately restrains himself, playing in a natural comedic way instead of relying on his appearance. Sisters shows a crucial turning point. Cena's greatest strength is no longer his physique, but his willingness to defy audience expectations. And then the real turning point comes with The Suicide Squad. In this film, he plays Peacemaker, an extremely dangerous mercenary with a twisted, irrational mindset, willing to kill anyone in the name of peace. This character is both funny and terrifying, a contradictory individual. He talks about peace but acts with extreme violence. Cena portrays Peacemaker as an empty energy mass, loud, confident, but lacking any real foundation inside. He talks a lot, acts aggressively, but doesn't truly listen to anyone. In the Peacemaker series, this character is explored in full depth. No longer just a joke or a comedic tool, Peacemaker becomes a genuine psychological study. The series explores his traumatic childhood, his toxic relationship with his father, and his obsessive need for recognition. Interestingly, Peacemaker doesn't get better. He only begins to realize how broken he is. And that realization doesn't heal anything. Here, Cena does something that almost no one thought he could do before. He allows the character to be vulnerable. There are moments of silence where the facade of confidence crumbles, revealing a deeply wounded person inside. It's no longer just action or humor, but genuine emotion. If the Marine was pure strength, Legendary was restraint. Then, The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker are where Cena proves that he can be funny, dangerous, and very human at the same time. And most importantly, this is the first time he doesn't just play a role, he truly disappears into the character. In The Suicide Squad, John Cena portrays Peacemaker as a boisterous shell, confident, masculine, and steadfast in his ideals. But importantly, the film also shows that all of that is just acting, a performance rather than true nature. In Peacemaker, that shell is completely stripped away. For the first time in his career, Cena doesn't just play a character. He has to disappear into genuine psychological trauma. Peacemaker's trauma isn't expressed through dialogue, but through silence. Moments when the aggressive exterior crumbles, revealing a frightened child inside. Cena handles these scenes with surprising fragility. His face retains the pain throughout the series. His voice breaks as the emotional defenses crumble. It's noteworthy that he portrays the same character in two completely different ways. In The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker is a comedic and chaotic performance. In his solo series, however, he became a tragic, complex character. The film required Cena to do the opposite of his action star instinct: sit still and feel. No action, no ostentation, simply exist in emotion. And he did it with a precision that completely contradicted his muscular appearance. Here, Cena's acting range wasn't in action, but in stillness, in daring to let the camera linger on his face as emotion unfolded. This character demanded that he be vulnerable, desperate, even pitiable, all things that contradicted his public image. But it was this commitment that transformed Peacemaker into one of the most complex roles Cena has ever played. And that complexity stemmed from his willingness to be honest with the character's wounds. After this turning point, Cena returned to action films with F9, but this time things were different. He plays Jacob Toretto, Dom's younger brother, a villain built on resentment and a need for self-promotion. On the surface, Jacob is a familiar type of character, a trained, cold, efficient warrior, reminiscent of roles in films like The Marine or 12 Rounds. But beneath that exterior lies everything Cena has learned. Jacob isn't just skilled, he's also wounded. Cena portrays this through tight body control. Every movement is purposeful, like someone who has learned to turn everything into a weapon. But alongside that, his vulnerability. When talking about his past, about being rejected by his father, he reveals his true emotions. Not much, but enough for the viewer to feel. The biggest difference from his previous action roles is the emotional subtext. Jacob isn't just strong, he's trying to appear strong to hide his inner insecurity. Every confrontation with Dom is essentially an affirmation. I have value too. I'm not just your shadow. Cena places that despair beneath the image of an action hero, making Jacob both terrifying and pitiable. And when the character fails, it's not just a physical failure, but a confirmation of his greatest fear, that he was never good enough. It is here that Cena's evolution becomes most apparent. He no longer just plays warriors, but transforms them into psychologically complex individuals. Jacob is not just a villain. He is an example of how resentment can distort ability into ruthlessness. In Fast 10, Jacob returns, but no longer as a member of F9. This time the story revolves around Dom's final confrontation with Dante Reyes, and Jacob appears as a reluctant ally after surviving in a way that is very much in the Fast and Furious franchise. But the important thing isn't the film's logic, but the character. Jacob no longer reacts instinctively or tries to prove himself superior. His journey in this installment is about choice. He actively decides who he wants to be and which side he wants to take. The film doesn't completely resolve that conflict, but at least it acknowledges the possibility of change. John Cena's portrayal of Jacob is also noticeably different. He retains the physical prowess of a soldier, the precision in his actions, but his emotional foundation is different. Jacob is calmer, more observant, no longer carrying the energy of having to prove something as before. He's like someone who's had time to reflect on himself, and that completely changes how he appears on screen. Cena brings restraint to the role. Instead of overwhelming the scene with his presence, he often steps back, creating space for other characters, demonstrating patience. This is a small but very important change. From someone who always steals the spotlight to someone who understands how to blend in with the group. The transition from F9 to Fast X shows that Cena has truly absorbed what he learned from his psychological roles. He takes the familiar soldier archetype and adds inner depth, something that has always existed but was previously unexplored. Then he takes a completely different direction with Vacation Friends. This is a light-hearted comedy revolving around two couples who meet on vacation and form an unusual friendship. The story isn't grand, mainly focusing on humorous situations and the clash between two different lifestyles. Cena plays Ron, a boisterous, carefree character who is completely comfortable with his own ridiculousness. What's noteworthy is how he enjoys this role. Without any pretense or control, he completely lets loose, playing with the comedic situations, performing physical stunts without hesitation, and transforming his roughness into a unique charm. Ron could have been annoying, but Cena made the character endearing, precisely because of that carefree attitude. His energy radiated, not overshadowing, but elevating the other actors. This is a sign of an actor who understands how to work in a team, not just be the main star. Vacation Friends shows something important. Cena not only does comedy, but is comfortable with it. He doesn't need to prove anything, just play his role. And then there's Ricky Stenicki, perhaps the clearest summation of his entire journey. The story revolves around three friends who create a fake character named Ricky Stenicki to blame for their wrongdoings. When the lie goes too far, they are forced to hire a washed-up actor named Rod to transform Ricky into the real him. And Rod, played by Cena, takes this the most serious role of his life. The interesting point lies in the contrast. To others, Ricky is just a pretext. To Rod, it's a role of a lifetime. And Cena exploits this extremely effectively. He combines physical comedy, improvisational energy, deliberate absurdity, while simultaneously maintaining a strange sincerity. Rod isn't a malicious con artist. He's just a man yearning for recognition, finally having an audience to perform for. And that's what makes the character both funny and pitiable. This film is like where all of Cena's skills converge. The physicality from action films, the timing from comedies, and the sincerity from psychological roles. Instead of choosing one direction, he uses them all, depending on the scene. This is where it becomes clear. Cena is no longer an apprentice actor, but someone who understands what he can do and is ready to use all those tools. And that's the core issue. John Cena didn't just progress, he expanded himself. Initially, he was just a very simple thing, a physique, a symbol of strength, someone you pick up when you need someone to break down doors, fight, and look reliable. But over time, he realized something that many actors never understand. The persuasiveness isn't about looks, it's about emotion. And as soon as he understood that, everything started to change. Because now, that massive physique is no longer just strength. It becomes a burden. That boisterous confidence is no longer just personality. It's a hidden insecurity. The jokes are no longer just playful banter. It's controlled timing. That's why when you watch him now, even in the silliest role, you still feel something beneath the surface. A hint of hesitation, a moment of vulnerability, a second where the acting layer almost falls away and the real person emerges. And this time, it's no longer accidental. It's skill. What makes Cena interesting isn't that he suddenly became a good actor. It's that he continuously evolves. From the Marine, pure instinct, to legendary, restraint. From 12, rounds, beginning of awareness. From Sisters, daring to break the mold. From the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, vulnerability. From Fast and Furious, emotional depth. From Ricky Stenicki, the sum of it all. It wasn't luck. It was someone discovering their own limits, right before the audience's eyes. And the most interesting thing, he hasn't stopped yet. Because once an actor has learned to overcome stereotypes, there are no roles truly beyond their capabilities anymore. And that journey is always more worth watching than any ending.